Thank you for joining us for tonight's event. We're going to be starting in a few minutes, but we're going to let some people just make their way over. Feel free to unmute yourselves and shout them out. This is your time to speak directly to anyone here in the room.
Hi, Jamie. I'm Jamie's sister. I'm super proud, really excited to see you tonight.
Hello, Jamie's sister.
There's Molly, and I see that, yeah, there's going to be some heavy family representation coming from my side.
We love that.
We do love that for sure.
Is your family here or like from elsewhere?
Molly is, but I see my other sister Megan and my dad Gerald are staying up late on the East Coast out of Boston. So thank you guys for that.
Welcome everyone. That is one of the blessings of doing virtual events.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see some of my people from Argentina as well.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm glad they joined us. Thank you.
Thank you.
We hear there's some folks from Argentina, the East Coast, the Bay. So we're really excited to be able to share our artists with the world through this platform. It's one of the blessings we have for virtual and the internet and our lives changing within the past year. Ramiro has a shout out in the chat from Diana Serrago.
Yeah, Diana, thank you. Welcome. A very old friend of mine, of my family. Yeah, it's been a while actually.
Thank you for joining us, Diana.
When are you going back to Argentina, Ramiro?
What's that?
When are you going back to Argentina?
I'm planning to go on December, but yeah, I think I will do that. I try not to go for Christmas or New Year because it's really hot and it's kind of unbearable. And but this year I'm gonna make it to Christmas and New Year's.
I was just about to say you're brave to be going during the summer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we always go in either in November or April. You know, it's a doable weather, but yeah. But this year I'm gonna join my family. It's been if it hadn't been for COVID, I would have gone like 2 times for now. But it's been almost. I mean, it's gonna be like 2 years without going there in December. So I miss them all very much.
Well, I hope everyone is having a lovely summer so far for those that are in the Northern Hemisphere. Being on a worldly platform as Zoom, we're happy to have everyone across the globe, like Vanessa said. And I just also want to say that we are going to start our presentation. I want to welcome everyone to ArtSpan's Art in Neighborhoods reception honoring the works of Ramiro Cairo, Sheng Lor, Jaime Lovejoy, and Diane Wang. They are currently exhibiting at Virtual Coffee on Valencia in the Mission. Now, a little introduction to our Art in Neighborhoods program for those that aren't familiar. It was initiated in 2018 with the intention of facilitating spontaneous artful discoveries by locals and tourists alike. These venues are not your typical white-walled galleries or museums, but places we tend to frequent as busy urbanites, including cafes, restaurants, activity sites, hotels, and community centers. With the goal of bolstering our artist community with exposure and potential art sales, this program intends to bring an influx of business to the participating venues. As when you are aligned with ArtSpan, you are aligned with our community-driven mission to keep artists alive in San Francisco. Before we begin our presentation, just a reminder that SF Open Studios registration is open. This year, taking into account health and environmental variables out of our control, SF Open Studios is wide open. That means artists can create their own events at whatever date and time that works best for them. We are evolving and expanding our bandwidth powered by technology. SF Open Studios 2021 will be similar and better. We encourage any Bay Area artists to participate as there are no geographical restrictions. Please tell all artists that you know to be members of ArtSpan and to register for Open Studios. The deadline to register for premier level and to get listed in our printed guide is Sunday, August 1st. Okay, as I mentioned before, Ramiro, Sheng, Jamie, and Diane's art is up at Virtual Coffee, and they are exhibiting until August 31st. Please visit Virtual to view the work in person. And I think I got word from some artists that their doors are finally open for people to go in and order their coffee. Thus, you can also see the work in person instead of through their heavy duty plexiglass ordering shield. They are located at 1026 Valencia Street in the Mission, and the hours are Monday through Sunday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Please check the chat for more information. We are going to be moving on to our first guest artist, Ramiro Cairo. How's it going, Ramiro?
Good. Hello. How are you? How everyone? Thank you for having us. Actually, thank you, Nick, Vanessa, ArtSpan, Ritual, Coffee. Thank you.
Of course, we're happy to have you here.
Generating this space for artists. Yeah, thank you so much.
It's honestly our pleasure. It fills me up with so much joy being to see how grateful artists are and with all the work that we do for them. So thank you.
We really are.
Ramiro is a mixed media artist and designer working with television sets, instruments, plexiglass, and obsolete technological ephemera. Ramiro, what is the starting point or inspiration for the drawings on your spatial pieces? How did you go about creating such clean geometric shapes, both drawn and cut plexiglass?
Oh, thank you for the clean adjective. I love it. Well, it's kind of impossible to talk about spatial without talking about my previous work. It's all linked, and yeah, I think that the seed of this work, the inspiration comes from mechanical components, machinery industry. So before I started doing visual art, I was working on functional pieces like mirrors, lamps, coffee tables, also art figures, and they were all made out of technological scrap. For just to give you an idea, the very first thing I ever made back in 2002 was a TV mirror. I call it's a mirror, but it's made out of the screen housing of a TV. So you would see yourself in that TV that would probably reflect your, your childhood or whatever. It's a. So I started making that type of functional objects, and so during that process, I started disassembling those devices, and I started collecting all those pieces inside. Some of them were used for making these products, and the other ones I just kept because I liked them. And then I started, like, after very many years, I started seeing like all these internal pieces, mechanical pieces, like if they were brush strokes. I don't know if it's amazing when you open a machine that is full of gears or just mechanical components. You see, it's the beauty of all those pieces. So I came up with the idea of putting them together in kind of assemblage art. And that's why I called it industrialization, because it all came from the industry, right? So I have a piece here, so I can give you an idea of this. So those are most of them components from machines, cameras, computers, and and also, well, and then I used, of course, wires and elements that were not scrap. And well, that is kind of the beginning of everything. That was actually my first time doing like visual art. So yeah, and then I started working on, so how can I say this? I started seeing these elements like that, but then I wanted to create my own pieces rather than putting together pieces that I found. So I started drawing and putting together all the things I learned from technical drawing, architectural drawing back in time in high school. And that's when I created a series of work, a series that is actually drawings, where I started putting together all these ideas by having learned from all the pieces that I had made in the industrialization pieces, that series. So I made all these faces.
Okay, wow.
Those are freehand drawings, but I started using elements of industry, and also I mixed it with architectural techniques. Actually, yeah, like technical drawing, and then after that, I came up with the idea of a spatial by designing a system of abstract geometric graphic design drawings, which is this, which is the work we are showing today. But this is the very beginning of that.
Wow.
So here I wanted to create a conversation. I designed 15 individual pieces, and then I put them, I started trying to create a conversation between the 2 dimensions and the 3 dimensions by adding cut plexiglass, wires, and all that. So and that is actually the process I was very excited about, because it was I had this challenge. I wanted to put together all these machine-like drawings, like graphic design, but also I wanted to use the elements that I had done with industrialization.
Quick question for you.
Yep.
What are the black balls? And are they were like little shapes like that were they're a 3D element of your work? And when I was putting up the artwork, I was curious what those little kind of black pegs were.
Well, I don't, the black the spheres.
Yeah.
Oh, those are wooden wooden spheres, but I wanted to, that is part of what I just said. I wanted to extrapolate. I wanted to pull out the plane, and that's how it. So I most of my work have circles, and so I wanted to create that conversation between the 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions by converting a circle into a sphere. So yeah, and then well, this body of work is actually so I created 15 pieces, and I decided to have 12 pieces with the same dimensions, and then I decided to have the very last 3 pieces, which is kind of a summary of all the shapes: circles, triangles, and squares. And that was the main reason why I decided to have these last 3 pieces bigger. Was kind of the end of the work.
Do you still design functional pieces? And if so, has spatial, this collection here, has it influenced that process of designing functional pieces?
I'm not making functional pieces right now, but it was actually the other way around. The functional pieces that I designed were kind of the beginning of everything, as I said.
Thank you. And then one last question. You love music, I believe. How has music shaped your visual art creation?
Well, yes, I am a musician. I am a drummer myself. I worked as a drummer for very many years, that actually forever. And I still do. I teach, I'm a drum instructor, and I and I play in bands and I perform and I rehearse. But I never thought that music had shaped my art
Mm.
uh, uh, side.
Mhm.
But then I actually was something that I wasn't conscious of, that all these pieces, in my opinion, have rhythm inside in a way that they all have intervals kind of patterned. I think it is unconsciously related. It wasn't something that came up straight from music, but it was a process that I think I ended up doing this type of art that is really in some way connected to rhythm, I think.
Well, that is amazing. I love that. That I love music as well, and I enjoy listening to music. But I think having the practice of creating music and also a visual practice, they are hand in hand, and I'm glad you're able to make that connection.
Yep. Thank you for
Do
that.
you have any questions for Ramiro?
We don't have any right now in the chat, but I have my own comment that I was a little shocked when you initially said that music, or you thought at first, didn't play a major role, because to me,
Mhm.
when I look at your pieces, they feel like they're dancing and in movement with each other. So it feels very musical to me. Like they almost look like their own little musical notes, like interacting with one another. So thank you, Ramiro. And
No, thank you. Yeah.
for anybody who's listening, if a question does occur to you or comment about Ramiro's work, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We can revisit it
Mhm.
later in our presentation.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ramiro? Like she said, we'll revisit towards the end of our presentation. Thank you so much again for presenting your work and having
Thank you,
your
Nick, Vanessa. Thank you.
appreciate it. Moving on to our next artist, Sheng Lor. Hi, Sheng.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Excellent. Welcome back to America. I heard you were overseas for a bit.
I was overseas, and as a textile artist, I was very happy to be in Turkey, where they also have a very, very huge textile culture.
Indeed, they do. That is, I'm sure it was bountiful in terms of inspiration.
Yes, we visited lots of rug galleries and shops.
Excellent. So Sheng is a fiber and textile artist crafting slow weavings with sustainable materials. Sheng, why is cloth so important to you, and to how you express your ideas?
Yeah, so I am a Hmong artist, and just growing up, Hmong, I feel like I mean, Hmong people are a very a production culture. I feel like as American, we're used to consuming. We forget that in other countries and other cultures, they produce more than they consume. And I grew up in a culture in which, all the women produce textiles. And so as a form of either employment or just cultural and expression. So I grew up with textiles. I love making textiles. I've been doing it ever since I was a child. And it just came natural to me as a choice of medium.
Great, thank you. What do you hope to convey to viewers of your work? Do you envision a creative progression in a continuous weft series that involves text or other imagery?
So I hope, let me see. So for this, I have two pieces in the ritual gallery. And one of the most important ways I express my ideas and that I want to convey is actually quantity. Because I work in textiles, and I do constantly think about cloth and garments, the garment industry, the fashion that we consume. I really love the idea of slow cloth and slow fashion. And so sometimes it takes me a year or more to produce one piece. That's because in my other pieces, not in these ones at the gallery, but I forge for dyes. And then sometimes I have to ferment the dyes and they take such a long time, and then I have to weave it. And I really want to convey this idea of slow as a value and as something that's desirable, and something that is sustainable. And so my pieces are very plain, and they're a little bit big. They're almost they are the size of my loom, basically, actually. And I hope to convey that, you know, plain can be something desirable. And then these I made at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And from these pieces are ritual, I moved on to add natural dyes to them. So that has been my progression so far. And I forage for dyes in a way in which I don't take anything I don't need from the environment. Obviously, I don't want to harm the environment. My progression from these pieces are to actually tell the how to express the dyeability of a place.
Are you trying to express where you get dyes from? You really want to highlight that location?
Right. So I mean, I always want to express my ideas from the perspective of cloth. So asking questions like, if, you know, how this cloth, if cloth could speak, what would it say? You know, what would our bed sheets say? But I mean, cloth is just everywhere around us. And so I want to express, if we were to produce garments or textiles in San Francisco, what would it look like? And what would it say about the ability to produce here regionally? So I'm using, you know, local materials and local supplies. And then foraging is important to me because it's using resources that are available to me locally.
Without stripping the environment of that resource.
Exactly.
Would you consider time also a medium that you work with?
Yes, process and time is super important to me. And, you know, I think, I mean, I'm concerned with not only how we experience art, but also how we produce art. So, you know, using non-toxic materials. So the whole process and the time that it takes to make it is very, very important to me.
Thank you so much for this beautiful, insightful of how you process your work and what you do and how you get your materials. Do we have any questions in the chat for Sheng?
We don't have any questions, but we do have a couple of comments. Sheng, it's slow as a value, and that's desirable and sustainable. Somebody really resonated with that comment that you made in the chat. So thank you. And again, a reminder to our guests who are joining us. I know that sometimes questions and comments come to us a little late, so please do feel free to drop them in as they occur to you, and we'll read them aloud. Oh, we do have one comment. What dye colors are you experimenting with now?
I've been doing a lot of indigo and growing my own indigo, but the ones I forage are still a mystery, actually, because I forget when it was, we had, you know, huge windstorms, and I collected lichens that had fallen from trees, and I fermented them and I dyed them, and they're very pale, like pale, it's almost like a pale burnt orange. But then the other aspect of dye, and going back to the idea of time, is that the dyes also change over time on the yarn itself. And so in the end, it will be pretty pale. And also, I'm also interested in seeing if pale colors can also be something that is desirable or valuable. But right now I'm getting some oranges and very, very light purples.
I do want to say to all our viewers that I had the privilege of seeing Sheng's studio space. Unfortunately, she was not there because she was in Turkey, but to see the looms and the fabric and the fibers that she uses in the space, it was quiet, but it was full of energy at the same time. And I can't wait to see you at work maybe one day. Open Studios is coming, and I believe Journal Building will have a day or a weekend that they'll be open. So make sure everyone stay tuned for Open Studios from September 16th to October 17th. Sheng, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Nick.
Appreciate it. On to our next artist is Jaime Lovejoy. Welcome, Jaime.
Thanks, Nick. Nice to be here.
Welcome to our reception. Jaime is an abstract painter that focuses on paint's fluidity in relation to natural cycles of change and flex. Jaime, do you experience nature differently compared to before you started using it as an inspirational reference? And what have you learned about nature that informs your current work?
So I thought this was a really great question. I hadn't really thought about how I reacted to nature differently, like before I started to use it as a resource. So I really kind of thought about that deeply, but because I've always been drawn to being outside and being in nature. But one thing that has really changed since I've been painting more and using nature as references is looking at nature more as a composition. Like before it used to just be like, oh, that's pretty, and now I feel like I kind of have that like photographer's eye. I'm like, what is that? How does that really, how do the colors bleed into each other? What's the ombre that's coming out of that sunset, or the fractal lines in a rock formation? So I think that's how I'm kind of looking at it differently. And usually when I am out walking or hiking, I take a lot more pictures now, just little hacked pictures, on my phone. But I definitely reference those as I come back into the studio and looking at that. And if you on my Instagram, you can see I post some of those sometimes as well too. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to replicate, what I see are those pictures. I think some people refer themselves as a landscape abstract artist, and that's not how I work. But I definitely think those visuals and experience works itself into my body of work, probably most with the colors. And because by far the biggest inspiration for my work is the color palette that I'm working with. And like just looking at these two that you have up right now, these are directly from a hike that I went on, and you'll see that in the names of them. I don't veer too far from the names. The one on the right is from a hike in the Marin Headlands. The one on the left is from a recent coastal trip that I went up, and so these pieces do take time, but different experiences that I kind of go through as throughout the course of a series definitely works its way in. So I think, nature probably most impacts my work as it relates to the colors, because I rarely paint directly from a tube. I usually mix all my own colors. I'd love to go with Sheng on a foraging trip and make my own paints. I haven't done that yet, but that's something I'd love to explore. So
and your
so
neighbors.
I think, yeah, that's see, we're all right here. So I'll have to knock on her door sometime and go where are we going today? I'd love to see what the colors of San Francisco, how they would come out in her weaving and in my painting,
Well, that's a dual artist show right there. Like let's put that in a gallery. That's great.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's a lot of it is seasonal colors. You'll see I probably put out 2 series of 10 or 12 paintings each year. and they're definitely seasonal. The ones that are coming out in the winter and fall are a lot of earthy colors, and then in the spring and summer, sometimes more, you know, a lot of the bright colors and stuff here too. So, so yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
The freedom of your paint keeps the eye constantly moving. As a fellow abstract artist, I'm an abstract landscape. Thank you.
Okay.
How do you know when it's finished? And have you ever splattered an area and regretted it, or do you enjoy the process and let intuition flow?
I've 100% regretted a splatter or a color choice gone wrong. There's one, it's not up in the show at Ritual, but part of the series that there was something underneath that I was like missing. I was like, oh, I should have never covered that, you know. But I think if you're not taking those risks, you never learn from that. And so you kind of have to push yourself. I'm constantly trying to push myself to see what I can do. And, you know, with it, each mistake or I guess experiment gone wrong, you know, there's a learning point and you have to kind of find that balance. But that being said, like I do have to go with the flow, so to speak, as well. My earlier works when I was younger was a lot of scraping. So if I put something in like a lot of layers, so I could scrape it off if I didn't like it. But with the work that I'm doing right now, it's much more water-based. It's heavily watered down acrylics and more negative space that I'm using. So, you know, I have to be a little bit more thoughtful with each layer. But once the pour is on, the pour is on, and I kind of have to work with it too. I think if you go back just a few slides,
Yeah.
another interesting fact, one more.
Oh,
Is also my studio floor isn't even. So sometimes I'll pour something and I think it's set and I've balanced it. And then I come back, you know, a few hours later and I'm like, oh, and so one example of that is this one on the right where that blue, you know, kind of dives up there. And so I think, you know, I need to kind of either decide then, do I need to fix this? Do I go with it? And then how does the piece evolve when nature takes over, right? Or gravity, I guess.
our
And so,
architecture.
yeah, totally. You know, so just kind of finding that balance in between, you know, and kind of the yin and yang between the flow and the overstructure. But yeah, what was the second part of the, or how do I know when it's done?
Yeah, how do you know it's done? Like sometimes I could keep going and just
Yeah.
layer more detail.
All the time. Yeah. I think that's the biggest growth area that I had this year was not overworking a piece, right? It's like the constant overworking of a piece and being like, oh, I could add this, I could add this. And so I think it's really, again, referencing like what Sheng was saying too, like taking your time and patience. And I work on several pieces at a time because I have to wait for the paint to dry. And so I think it's what I've learned this year in particular is just taking the time to wait in between the layers and thinking thoughtfully. Like the first pour is always a big one, and I kind of see what happens there too. And then I get more selective with each layer that kind of moves on from that. Like the one you have up right now, big pink on the right. I loved the pink and I loved the brown, and I sat with it for months, you know, because I was like, it's not done, but I'm worried I'm going to mess. I love this so much and I don't want to mess it up. And I'm, you know, so it's finding the right balance until the next piece of it kind of reveals itself. And I think, like I said, you know, previously about how nature inspires that, what I might envision initially after a few months and different things that I've seen or things evolve, then maybe my initial direction has changed as well too. So it is a constant battle between not overworking a painting and finding that restraint. I think for me, I'm always looking for some sort of anchor, which is either usually a more opaque section or like in blues here, like some of the line work or the markings that I do, and something that kind of anchors or grounds the piece for me. And and then, it sounds so cheesy, but it is kind of like, oh, there it is. You know what I mean? Like, okay, done, but
like that little touch of burnt orange
mhm,
smear at the right at the base of that dark splotch, it just that adds just
yeah,
enough warmth to really kind of balance out the piece.
yeah,
Going back to Sheng, I think time is a medium that you use as well, because you need to let it not only just let it dry, but take a step back and look at it and like, okay, let me let it breathe, let me let it rest.
yeah. Yeah, 100%. And that was hard. That was hard. I was like, I want to get in it. I want to paint. Like, because I have like kind of blocks of time to paint. I'm a mother. I have like a lot of kids. So like sometimes when I get a block of time to paint, I'm like, I want to do as much as I can. And that's one of the benefits of the last 2 years, or the last year and a half, was having more time closer to my studio to kind of be able to be like, yes, let's give it some breathing time, and really seeing the benefits from that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jamie. Your insightful processes and all your beautiful work and how it relates to nature is fantastic. Your work filled up the walls of Ritual, and I really do encourage everyone to go to Ritual Coffee to see her artwork in person. Like I said, the doors are open. Order some coffee. Feel everyone's work, not just Jamie's. But Jamie does have 7 pieces, and they are pretty large, so they are big and bold, and we love the color, and they love the conversation they create with the other work.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Nick.
Of course. Any questions for Jamie?
Yes. Somebody asked, Jamie, do you work with the pictures horizontal or vertical?
The pictures that I take, like out in nature, or is that...
I think maybe the paintings, but
yeah. So usually most of my work, actually this last series, I had many more vertical pieces than normal. Normally, I think I gravitate to horizontal, although currently my new series that I'm doing right now, I'm doing a lot of square. But in particular, sometimes I work with the angles. So there was one piece in the series, and it's not actually up at Ritual, but actually, no, it is. It's Route 1. If you go back a slide, that one, yeah, this one. Yeah, that one was intended to be a vertical piece. And same thing, it just wasn't working and whatnot. And, I went on that coastal trip and, kind of saw some color themes and really kind of changed my perspective as I was looking at this piece. And it really kind of flipped all around as I was working with it. And I take pictures in between, as I'm making my progress. And this is one that like really kind of changed drastically. So this is like, to your earlier question too, about like, this is one where I kind of let inspiration just kind of guide me here. Some of them I'm like, this is what I want to do with it. And this one was like, no, it's not working this way. It's not working this way. And Nick, honestly, this one too is a piece that I overworked, that I whitewashed, wiped clean, and started fresh. So there's a secret hidden piece underneath this one as well too. But yeah.
Well, I think every painter has their secret painting that they're like, okay, let me just cover it up. And,
Yeah.
it's time
I don't
move
want to have to
on.
build a new canvas. I'm just going to reuse this one. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. All right. Vanessa, any other questions?
Not currently.
Okay.
Thank
No
you,
worries.
Jamie.
Thank you,
Thank
Jamie.
you.
Appreciate it. And now we're moving on to our 4th and final artist, Diane Wang. Welcome to the stage, Diane. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, glad to meet you all.
Diane works with sculptural elements on a flat plane, showcasing the beauty of petals as a vehicle for human reflection. Diane, how has your background in design and technology illuminated your visual art creations?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I think the first bit was I really do appreciate minimalism when it comes to design and just focus on a visual composition and a piece. So I think a lot of what you see in my sculptures is really influenced by my training as a designer. But also I think just working in technology is what kind of motivated my my interest in working with nature-inspired elements. I think technology just moves really quickly and is changing our world really quickly. So for me, the question is, on the other side, how do we not lose that connection with nature? It's so fundamental to how we see and interact with the world. And that's really what motivates me to have this completely kind of separate practice.
Excellent. I'm glad you also answered. I was going to answer another question. Sorry, ask another question about like if you're diametrically opposed or stray away from your kind of like, I guess, day job with your art. Thank you so much. And what was your inception point for your Remembrance series? And what do you wish viewers experience when viewing your art?
Yeah, so I started this series about 1 year ago. I had the really great opportunity of completing a residency at Chalk Hill, which is in Healdsburg. And for me, that was a moment to just immerse myself in nature. Before that, I was kind of just in the city, and I'll kind of have little snippets of nature here and there. But that really reminded me and grounded me that my practice and what I'm interested in is very inspired by nature and our connection with it. And so I used that time to really hone in on not just the subject of what I wanted to work with, but also my craft. And so I am really passionate about working with paper as a medium. That's just something that I was really obsessed with, and then just really honing in on understanding the material, what it can do, and also just continuing to push that.
I really appreciate the beautiful warm yellow on the backside of the petals that really glow in the photos, and when you see it in person as well, with the light in Ritual Coffee, you know, these sculptures that are on basically they're on like boards or canvases, they just have this illumination to them from the inside. It's definitely a detail that is really well thought out, and I really appreciate that.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it was really funny. At the residency, it was a happy accident that I just fell in love with. So it was Margot, who was running the residency, dropped by and gave me a lily with that yellow. And I was just working and playing with paper forms. And I noticed that some of the forms or petals that I was working with had that reflected light that I thought was just so gorgeous and contrasted really well with the raw textures. So yeah, now it's everywhere. I'm obsessed with it still.
I love when happy accidents become a mainstay to your practice.
Yeah, yeah, I'll never forget that. But love it so much.
Do you plan on experimenting with other colors beyond yellow?
I do. So I've been working with kind of the stark white, kind of just working with the forms and experimenting with, I think, just subjects that I've been really interested in. I think through the next few years, I'm interested in, one, like understanding the breadth of paper types as a material, and two, working with colors as well. But in the meantime, I wanted to kind of just like pause and experiment with forms and have like a really nice body of work on that.
Great, thank you. Like I said, these pieces are available to view at Ritual Coffee. These three pieces by Diane are epic in person. They jut away from the wall, and they look like the Disney concert hall in downtown LA, mixed with calla lilies, and they're just quite beautiful and simple, but also bold and bright. And I love that raw edge you have, and they also look clean. So there's a lot of opposites going on, and it works in general, and it's really successful pieces.
I love that. Thank you.
Of course. Any questions for Diane?
Yes, we have one question that is, why is your work called Remembrance?
Yeah, so a lot of my interest in working with these kind of faded forms is all about provoking the thought of just these memories of nature deeply embedded in us and how beautiful I think that is. Um, and so part of that was when I work on these pieces, a lot of it I'm not really referencing anything too literal. It's actually me trying to remember these moments that I find really inspiring from nature, and just kind of interpreting that onto the panel in front of me and working with that in a very intuitive way.
Okay, and moving on to the end of our presentation. Thank you, Diane, once again for having time to be at our reception. You can view all these works once again on our dedicated virtual art gallery. The link is right here and will be inputted into the chat as well. Please view Ramiro, Sheng, Jamie, and Diane's art in person at Virtual Coffee, 1026 Valencia Street in the Mission. And I just want to get the open up the floor for a little Q&A portion for any viewers that want to ask any questions to the artists themselves. You may put yourself onto gallery view, unmute yourself, say hi.
Oh. Well, I'll make a comment. Diane, I'm so impressed with your work because anybody who knows me in person outside of a floating head knows that I'm like really colorful and I love just clashing patterns and just, loudness. And there's something about your work, I'm always impressed with artists who are able to use negative space so beautifully and have all of the movement and the play and just really accentuate light and shadow. I'm curious if you ever work or have considered working with color, colors outside of muted tones, or if, that's kind of like your corner and what you feel like is kind of your calling.
Yeah, what a great discussion topic. I actually love colors. It's funny because the way I got to working with sculpture was when I was working with painting and abstraction. But I realized that I gradually just honed in on loving to work with textures, but also paper in particular, even in my paintings. So for me, yeah, it ended up being just as I was experimenting in my really focused, dedicated time during my residency, I realized that I really wanted to work closely with the light and shadow. And so all of the other colors, I think in particular, light and shadow will change the colors. So a bit of it was how do I kind of maintain the focus around everything that I'm doing with the light and shadow already. And that was taking out the colors.
Yes, your work really puts light and shadow front and center. So it's very cool. But I'd love to hear from anybody else out there.
Any other curious art lovers that want to ask our artists any questions, please do so. You can unmute yourself and say hi.
I just wanted to say that it's a real pleasure to be sharing this exhibition with you. This actually fantastic lineup of artists. I love it, and it's beautiful. It was beautiful to see, the behind the scenes of all their work. I love that. It's actually really interesting. I had a lot of questions, but I just, I might have the opportunity to meet you in person and ask the questions in person. But beautiful. I love it. Hi, Joanne. Thank you for everything.
Hi, I have a question for all of you. I'm the director of ArtSpan, for those of you who don't know me, seeing the family dialed in from all over the place, and those fans and new fans out there, thank you so much for being here. This is why I do the work. I am so inspired by all of you. It warms my heart and makes me be able to do this work for another 6 months, because it's very hard work to help support artists for a living. But my question for you all is, how do you feel about being in a show together? Because there is something that radiates so pure and true through all of you, and Nick and Vanessa, who do this work and bring you guys together. I feel like they kind of have a spirit animal of like finding the right artist for the right place. But how do all of you feel like being in the show together? Because seemingly your work is quite different or disparate, but your spirits are so similar. So I'm going to go back off of video and let you guys talk, because I really want to hear what you have to say about being in this together. So I'll let Nick decide who speaks first, but I really look forward to hearing your answer. Thank you all so much for what you do. And thank you all for being here tonight. It really means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan, for your question. To reference back to what she said, I chose you for virtual out of 16 submissions. And there was something about each and every work that you submitted that I thought would work not only for the space, but also have an interplay and conversation between each other. And if there's one artist that wants to speak out in terms of like how they feel about working with or having their work up with another one in relation to their work, please do so.
I love it. Just so excited. I think I'm inspired by each one of the other artists for very different reasons. And I think like Ramiro, I think the way you're balancing all of the elements and having things come off of the planes has been really inspiring. And Sheng, the way you're really working and crafting your materials as well. And Jaime, just like the fluidity of motion of your work. I think I see certain parallels, but for me, it's just really inspiring to connect and see it all together too.
Yeah, I would second that. Like Nick, I do have to give you props because I think you did curate a really, really unique show that does have a common storyline, and they did kind of all feed into one another. And I think similar to what maybe Ramiro was getting at, like I've got like 19 other questions that I feel like, we should grab coffee at Ritual and just like, find out more about each other's process and whatnot. And yeah. Yes, because I think we work in different mediums and they're different kind of backgrounds, but it worked so well together. And even seeing it up today together, it just was a really nice job curating, and it's just wonderful to kind of hear about your backgrounds, and I also find it quite inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that.
And yeah, for me, I'm in. I would love to continue in this path. I think as everyone highlighted, I think it's a really nice lineup, and your curation was quite perfect.
Appreciate
really
that.
Nice. Very nice. Very, very nice.
Well, thank you for submitting. You made my job easier by submitting your beautiful work, honestly.
I actually submitted the work the night before. I mean, 10 minutes before the deadline. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Sheng, do you have any commentary on your co-artists?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I noticed when I saw the exhibition put together, and Nick, you did a great job, is just how thoughtful every piece was. And I feel like you chose artists that whose work were very reflective and that really allow the viewer to be reflective. And I thought it was a great, I mean, everyone's art is very timely when, SF is just reopening after a huge pandemic, and, the space really allows the viewers to just reflect and have a quiet time, and everyone's art gave me that feeling.
Beautifully put, thank you so much. Do we have any last comments from our viewers and audience for our artist?
I think at this point, I'm just going to remove all these spotlights so I can see everybody's beautiful faces who has been bold enough to turn their video on. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to finish off, our team would like to thank everyone for attending our virtual reception tonight. As restrictions are lessened, we hope to hold future receptions in person. For the meantime, I would like to propose a toast to our artists. Ramiro, Sheng, Jamie, and Diane for the lovely conversation and reception celebrating your creative achievements. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.